The gypsy woman told my mother before I was born.
Welcome to RNB Hives, where the real stories behind the greatest music ever made come alive. Right now, we're going back before auto-tune, before streaming, before playlists, to a 15-year stretch from 1950 to 1965, when 10 songs didn't just top the charts, they rewired the entire DNA of music. These aren't songs someone put together in a studio session. These are survival stories, acts of rebellion, accidents of genius, and moments of pure human lightning, bottled forever on vinyl. Stay with us. This is the countdown you didn't know you needed. Number 10. I'm Your Hoochie Coochie Man, Muddy Waters, 1954.
The gypsy woman told my mother
Before rock and roll had a name, before Chuck Berry had a guitar lick, before anyone coined the phrase soul music, there was Muddy Waters standing in front of a microphone at Chess Records in Chicago. And what came out of that studio on January 7th, 1954, changed everything. The song was written by Willie Dixon, who had been carrying it around for months, waiting for the right voice. He found Waters performing one night at the Club Zanzibar in Chicago during an intermission, and hummed him the melody right there between sets. According to guitarist Jimmy Rogers, who was in the room, Muddy was doing live riffs off those lyrics on stage that very same night. That's how fast and instinctively he owned it. When they finally recorded it, they used a stop-time riff, that tension-building pause where the music drops and only the lead instrument speaks. A technique so powerful it became the skeleton of blues rock and is still heard in music today. The song hit number 3 on the Billboard R&B chart and spent 13 weeks clinging near the top, the longest charting record of Waters' career at the time. The Rolling Stones later named themselves after a Muddy Waters song. Jimi Hendrix once said hearing Muddy's music as a little boy scared him to death. The Library of Congress added this recording to the National Registry in 2004. That's not a hit. That's a monument. Number 9. Tutti Frutti, Little Richard, 1955. Here is how a song that changed music forever was born. Little Richard Penniman was washing dishes at a Greyhound bus station in Macon, Georgia, frustrated, broke, and invisible to the music industry. He had been recording since 1951 and going nowhere. Then, in September 1955, Specialty Records gave him one last shot at a studio in New Orleans, and the session was going nowhere fast. During a lunch break, Richard sat down at a piano at the Dewdrop Inn and started belting out a wild, raunchy improvised song he'd been performing at clubs for years. Producer Bumps Blackwell heard something in the chaos and immediately brought in songwriter Dorothy Labostri to clean up the explicit original lyrics. And in 15 minutes of studio time, they transformed it into the record that would detonate popular music. Recorded in just 3 takes on September 14, 1955, Tutti Frutti sold over 200,000 copies in the first week and a half. It reached number 2 on the R&B chart and spent 22 weeks on the charts. By 1968, it had sold over 3 million copies. Elvis Presley performed it on national television twice in February 1956. The Beatles covered it throughout their early years. The Library of Congress added it to the National Recording Registry in 2010, calling it the announcement of a new era in music. Rolling Stone's Mojo panel of artists ranked it number 1 on their list of records that changed the world. And James Brown and Otis Redding, 2 future titans of soul, both started their careers as Little Richard impersonators. The opening cry, a wop bop a loo mop a lop bam boom, was Richard's onomatopoeic imitation of a drum roll. One man at a piano, 15 minutes. And the entire course of popular music shifted. Number 8. Maybellene, Chuck Berry, 1955. Chuck Berry walked into Chess Records in Chicago in May 1955 as a 28-year-old part-time musician who was also training to be a hairdresser. He came because Muddy Waters, his musical idol, had told him to go see Leonard Chess after a show. Barry thought Chess would love his blues material. Chess didn't. What caught his ear was a country swing tune Barry had reworked called Ida Red. Chess saw the potential immediately. A hillbilly song sung by a black man, bridging two worlds at once. They renamed it after a mascara box on the studio floor, changed the spelling to avoid a lawsuit from the cosmetics brand, and recorded it. 36 takes. It was Barry's first time ever inside a recording studio. Chess then gave DJ Alan Freed a 25% songwriting credit, pure payola, in exchange for radio promotion. And Freed played it on station WINS in New York for 2 straight hours one night. By the end of that broadcast, Chess Records was flooded with thousands of orders. The song sold over 1 million copies by the end of 1955, hit #1 on the R&B chart and #5 on the pop chart. Rolling Stone later ranked it 16th on their greatest songs of all time list. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame included it among the 500 songs that shaped rock and roll. One of Barry's biographers summed it up simply: Barry was the first to realize rock and roll needed a poet. But there's a darker side to this story. When Barry went to perform at a venue in Knoxville, Tennessee, they turned him away at the door. The organizers explained they had no idea Maybellene was recorded by a black man. He sat in his car and listened while a white replacement band played his music inside. And for years, Freed and a man named Russ Fratto, who Barry had never even met, took songwriting royalties from his creation. Barry didn't get sole credit until 1986, over 30 years later. That's the America these songs were born into.
If you're enjoying this, do well to like, share, and subscribe to keep connected.
Number 7. Blueberry Hill, Fats Domino, 1956. Fats Domino almost never recorded Blueberry Hill. His producer Dave Bartholomew flat out refused. The song had been a hit for Glenn Miller in 1940, covered by Louis Armstrong, Gene Autry, and dozens of others. Bartholomew told the label it was a bad idea, done too many times, not Fats' style, leave it alone. But Imperial Records owner Lou Chudd disagreed and pushed forward anyway. And here is the incredible part. There was never a single clean take of Blueberry Hill. Fats didn't know the lyrics. Nobody in the studio that day had the sheet music. He kept stumbling at different points across multiple attempts. The engineer had to splice together the best pieces from several broken takes, a rare practice in 1956, to create one complete master. That pieced-together recording then dominated the entire second half of 1956. It hit #1 on the Billboard R&B chart on October 6th and stayed at the top for 11 consecutive weeks. Then, Domino's next song, Blue Monday, took over at #1, then I'm Walkin' after that. By April 1957, Fats Domino had held the top position on the R&B charts for 27 straight weeks, 6 consecutive months. On one specific day, March 9, 1957, he had 4 songs simultaneously on the Billboard Hot 100. The song sold 5 million copies worldwide. Rolling Stone ranked it number 82 on their 500 Greatest Songs list. Grammy Hall of Fame, Library of Congress. It's in both. Lou Chudd, the man who overrode his producer and demanded the song be released, later said, "Rock and roll crossed over to the parents thanks to Blueberry Hill." And Bartholomew, the man who called it a bad idea, admitted he was shocked by how big it became. His exact words to the label after it exploded: "From now on, cut nothing but no good records." Number 6. Lonely Teardrops, Jackie Wilson, 1958.
Come on home. Come on home.
Jackie Wilson was so gifted that even the people around him couldn't fully contain what he was. They called him Mr. Excitement. And that wasn't a nickname, it was a warning label. He could sing opera. He could do James Brown splits before James Brown made them famous. And he had a vocal range that made grown men stop and stare. Elvis Presley once said he studied Jackie Wilson's moves. Michael Jackson later said the same thing. But before any of that celebrity mythology, there was a 23-year-old kid from Detroit who had just gone solo after years singing lead for Billy Ward and the Dominoes. And he was broke. with no material and no plan. He met two young struggling songwriters at a Detroit nightclub called the Flame Show Bar, Barry Gordy Jr. and his writing partner Roquel Billy Davis. Gordy gave him the song Reet Petite in 1957, which was a modest hit. Then in 1958, he gave him Lonely Teardrops. The song was originally recorded as a slow blues ballad, and Wilson and the Brunswick label executives felt something was missing. They gave it to veteran arranger Dick Jacobs, who rebuilt the entire structure, gave it energy, gave it motion. Wilson then sang it with what one observer described as vein-popping exuberance. It hit #1 on the R&B chart and #7 on the pop chart. Grammy Hall of Fame, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Rolling Stone number 315 on their greatest songs list. But here's what that song actually built. Barry Gordy used the royalties he earned writing Jackie Wilson's hits to rent a building in Detroit. That building became Tamla. Tamla became Motown. The Isley Brothers used to close their early shows with Lonely Teardrops, extending the ending into an improvised call and response. And that improvisation eventually became a completely separate song. They recorded it independently. They titled it Shout. So one Jackie Wilson performance accidentally birthed two of the most important musical institutions of the 20th century. #5. What Did I Say? Ray Charles, 1959. Ray Charles didn't write What Did I Say? He invented it out of desperation. On a December night in 1958 in a Pittsburgh dance hall, Charles and his band had played their entire catalog, every song they knew, and still had 15 minutes left on a 4-hour contract. If they stopped early, they didn't get paid. So Charles turned to his band and said, "Whatever I do, just follow me." He turned to his female backing singers, the Raylettes, and said, "Whatever I say, repeat after me." And then he sat down at his Wurlitzer electric piano and started playing a riff he'd never played before in his life. By the time the song ended, the crowd was on their feet. Some reportedly gathered at the stage begging to know the name of the song so they could buy a copy. Charles took the improvisation with him to every show for the next several weeks, watching the same frenzy erupt every single time. Then he called his producer at Atlantic Records and said, "I'm playing a song I don't know what it is, but people go wild every time we play it." They recorded it on February 18, 1959 in Atlantic's New York studio with an 8-track recorder that the studio had just purchased. Engineer Tom Dowd recalled they used no overdubs, did 3 or 4 takes, and were done. The song was so long, over 7 minutes, that it had to be split across 2 sides of the same single. Released in June 1959, it went to #1 on the Billboard R&B chart and #6 on the pop chart, Charles's first major crossover hit. Well, George Harrison later remembered being at an all-night party in 1959 where What Did I Say was played for 8 consecutive hours. Paul McCartney said hearing it told him immediately that he needed to make music. Several radio stations banned it for suggestive content. Charles responded publicly, "If you can't figure out what the song is about, something is wrong with you." Atlantic Records' best-selling record up to that point. A Grammy Hall of Fame inductee. And the song that lit the fuse for an entirely new genre called soul. #4. You Send Me, Sam Cooke, 1957. Sam Cooke wasn't supposed to be a pop star. He was the lead singer of the Soul Stirrers, the most respected gospel group in America. And crossing over to secular music was considered a betrayal so serious that his gospel label, Specialty Records, told him to choose. So he chose. He left. He signed with Keen Records. And the song he released as his debut single was so quiet, so gentle, so nakedly pure that it nearly got buried. The intended A-side of the single was a cover of Summertime. Disc jockeys ignored the A-side entirely and played the B-side. That B-side was You Send Me. And that's the place I'm sure longing to be. The song was written by his younger brother, L.C. Cooke. Sam gave the credit away because he didn't want his publisher profiting from it. and he'd hoped LC would record it himself. And Cooke had made a rough demo of it alone with a guitar back in 1955. The final version was recorded in Los Angeles in June 1957 and released on the Keen label. On December 1st, 1957, Cooke performed it on The Ed Sullivan Show. The very next day, You Send Me knocked Elvis Presley's Jailhouse Rock out of the #1 spot, a song that had been sitting at the top for 6 weeks. You Send Me then held #1 for 3 weeks on the pop chart and 6 weeks on the R&B chart. It sold 1.7 million copies. Overnight, with a single song, Sam Cooke went from earning $200 a week to over $5,000 a week. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame member. Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Songs, number 115. Art Garfunkel once said he must have sung You Send Me to himself walking up and down stairwells at least 1,000 times when he was first finding success. Aretha Franklin covered it in 1968. Otis Redding covered it. Rod Stewart cut it with Chaka Khan. The song has been covered by artists across every genre imaginable. And Sam Cooke, the king of soul, was shot dead in a Los Angeles motel in December 1964 at 33 years old, leaving behind 29 top 40 hits and a legacy that still defines what it means to make music from the soul. Number 3. At Last, Etta James, 1960. Etta James was 22 years old when she walked into Chess Records in 1960, and producer Leonard Chess looked at her and heard something the world wasn't quite ready for yet. A voice so raw, so combustible, so capable of shattering and rebuilding your entire emotional architecture that he surrounded it in orchestral strings and let it loose on a song that was nearly 20 years old. At Last was originally written for a wartime film in 1942 and recorded by Glenn Miller. By the time Etta got her hands on it, the song had already lived an entire life without her. But when she sang it, she retired every other version that had ever existed. She was born James Etta Hawkins in Los Angeles in 1938. She never knew her father. By 15, she was on the charts. Or by her late teens, she was battling an industry that wanted to erase her in favor of safer, whiter cover versions of her own songs. When she finally signed with Chess in 1960, she recorded her debut album At Last, and the title track single was released in early 1961. It reached #2 on the R&B chart. It only reached number 47 on the pop chart. On paper, it underperformed. In reality, it became one of the most enduring recordings in the history of American music. The Grammy Hall of Fame inducted it in 1999. The Library of Congress added it to the National Recording Registry in 2009. Beyoncé sang it for Barack Obama's first inaugural dance in 2009, which sparked a public feud with Etta, who felt her signature song had been taken from her without invitation. The song entered the UK charts for the first time in 2010, 49 years after it was recorded. And when Etta James died in January 2012, it charted again immediately, because some songs are attached to souls, and when those souls leave the world, the music rises up as evidence that they were here. Number 2. Georgia. On My Mind, Ray Charles, 1960.
Georgia, yeah.
The song was written in 1930 by Hoagy Carmichael and had been recorded many times over 30 years. It was pleasant, it was popular. And then in 1960, Ray Charles decided to record it. What happened next is one of those moments in music history where a song stops being a song and becomes something closer to a confession.
I sing for get it home way through.
Ray Charles was born in Albany, Georgia. He grew up in poverty in the state. He went blind at age 7 in Georgia. He left Georgia as a teenager and built his career elsewhere, but the state never fully left him. When he sang about Georgia on his mind, he wasn't singing about sweet tea and magnolias. He was singing about memory, about the complicated grief of a place that made you and broke you at the same time. That context, that lived-in biographical weight, is what made his version devastating in ways no previous recording could approach. The strings swelled, his voice cracked at exactly the right moment, and everything that had ever happened to Ray Charles in that state poured through the microphone. The recording won 2 Grammy Awards. The state of Georgia officially adopted it as the state song in 1979. Think about that. A black man who grew up in poverty in a segregated southern state, who went blind as a child, who left and never truly came back, his voice now permanently representing that entire state in perpetuity. Georgia on My Mind has been covered by Willie Nelson, Michael Bolton, and hundreds of others. But not one of those versions comes close, because Ray Charles wasn't covering a song. He was testifying. Number 1. A Change Is Gonna Come. Sam Cooke, 1964.
Now I find myself wanting.
Sam Cooke wrote A Change Is Gonna Come after reading that Bob Dylan, a 22-year-old white folk singer from Minnesota, had written a song called Blowin' in the Wind that people were calling the anthem of the civil rights movement. Cooke was the biggest black pop star in America. He had crossed every barrier, played every room, charmed every audience. And it embarrassed him that a white artist had written what should have been his song. So he sat down and wrote his own.
Cooke sings, "You Send Me."
Darling,
It was inspired in part by an incident in October 1963 when Cooke and his entourage were turned away from a Holiday Inn in Shreveport, Louisiana. Despite his fame and his money, the whites-only policy made him invisible, or he had also just lost his 18-month-old son Vincent, who drowned in the family swimming pool that same year. He was grieving. He was angry. He was 32 years old and standing at the intersection of personal catastrophe and political urgency. He recorded A Change Is Gonna Come in December 1963 at RCA Studios in Hollywood. It was released as the B-side of a single in December 1964, just days after Sam Cooke was shot and killed at a Los Angeles motel at age 33. The song went to number 9 on the pop chart and number 2 on the R&B chart posthumously. Rolling Stone ranked it number 12 on their 500 Greatest Songs of All Time list. It was named by the Recording Industry Association of America as one of the songs of the century. It became the unofficial anthem of the civil rights movement. When Barack Obama accepted the Democratic presidential nomination in 2008, A Change Is Gonna Come played over the speakers. Sam Cooke never heard the response to the greatest song he ever wrote. He was already gone. But the song he left behind, built from grief and rage and unfulfilled hope, outlived everyone who tried to stop what it described. This is the number 1 greatest R&B song from 1950 to 1965. And it wasn't just a song, it was a prophecy.